Hi and welcome back to my workshop. This is Lucas, a violin maker in Cremona, and today I'm going to be making a video quite different to the one that I was planning on uploading initially, as I'm going to be responding to one of the latest videos made by Two Set Violin. First of all, for those who don't know who Two Set Violin is, let me tell you that you've been living on a YouTube bubble because you have them and me. Anyhow, let me tell you that there are a couple of musicians who also make comedy sketches, reaction videos, and create a lot of different content related to the classical music environment. So make sure to go and subscribe to their channel. They recently made this video called Exposing Dark Secrets of the Violin Industry, and being a part of it myself and knowing some of the things that happen in this world, I can't say loud enough how happy I am that they decided to make this video, and I think it's about time we start addressing some of the issues that go on in it. Now I'm going to make myself some tea and I'm going to be commenting on their video and adding some of my own personal experiences and views to it. So let's get into it.
We were recently chatting to a few friends of ours that work in the business of selling musical instruments. They told us a lot of stories they have experienced themselves and also that they've heard behind the scenes. Initially it was like a shock to us, but then after some careful reflection we kind of mapped it back to our own experiences and realized that we ourselves have been kind of subject to similar kind of experiences. And so what we're talking about today is some of the unethical practices that happen in selling musical instruments.
Yeah. So yeah, we already know this is going to be interesting.
We're going to basically cover two main points. The first one is about what we only recently discovered to be a very widespread international phenomenon of a secret commission system. And the second part of the video we're going to talk about is selling fake instruments.
Yeah.
Alright, so commissions. It's kind of hard when doing research about this to find statistical evidence because so much of this is underground and just hearing stories. But we did find...
Yeah, it's quite impossible actually just to find any information about it.
Teachers operate from a kind of commission system where when the student buys an instrument, the teacher secretly takes a cut.
Note the word secretly as well.
A lot of the time,
I love how he emphasized the word secretly, so I'm actually stopping the video to do the exact same thing.
this is kind of an unspoken rule, and this results in very questionable behavior, right? So these friends of ours that we were talking to mentioned that sometimes a kid would buy an instrument from the shop, and then a few days later, they'll just get a phone call from a teacher. They'll be like, alright, so I heard that my student bought a violin from your place, you know what to do, right? And like already to me...
Fortunately, that really never happened to me, at least not the exact same way where after a sale, I got contacted by a teacher asking for a commission. But that might only be because I'm a violin maker and not a shop, so the way that clients approach me is slightly different. But what did happen to me is that I got asked for commissions before a sale, or in some cases teachers contacted me pretending to be interested in my instruments for themselves, and then they admitted that they just wanted to make the contact and asked me if I was willing to give them a 20 or 50% commission if they sent me a student, or else if they found me a client.
Yeah, I was so shocked to hear this. There's one thing when it's like an agreed upon commission system, right?
Yeah.
Like an affiliate marketing link thing, but the shop owner themselves don't even agree to this commission system.
And then they have to cough up commission based off an expectation.
You know, sometimes they try to be like, no, we just sold our instrument. But a lot of the times these teachers have such authority and power in the local...
Yeah, I've been told that in some places, if you don't buy the instrument that the teacher tells you to buy, they might try to make everything so that they stop you to get higher in your career.Maybe if you want to get into some particular music school or college, they will kind of speak badly about you.
Local musical community, they kind of use their influence as a threatening mechanism. So they might kind of insinuate, if you don't give me a commission, I'm going to spread to all my students not to buy instruments from your place.
And then their teachers probably have connections to other teachers.
Yes.
So it's like your deal has been cut off from that single teacher for all the students because you wouldn't agree to pay a commission that wasn't even agreed on in the first place.
Yeah, another example where this would often go wrong is, for example, the teacher initially recommended the student to buy from shop A. But the student themselves decided, I don't like this violin. They come to shop B and buy an instrument from shop B. The teacher will still call shop B and ask for the commission. Even though, like, the whole idea.
Yeah, so that's why they sometimes contact different shops or different makers, so that they can offer the students a wider range and they seem a bit more legit, but they're still getting the commission anyways. To be fair, it's still more legit than just showing them one possibility.
Of a commission is typically, I helped you get the sale, so
Yeah,
I
so
get
you
a
get
bit
a
of
commission. You can't trust the teacher to really genuinely care about you as a student, or if it's your kids that are learning, if they're gonna get a good instrument or not.
Back in the day as students, I really trusted my teacher.
100%.
And I think that's such an important dynamic to have when the student trusts that the teacher has their best interest in mind.
Yep.
But unfortunately, there are definitely cases where a teacher may be driven out of greed to sell crappy instruments or to recommend a much more expensive, overpriced violin. And there are definitely stories that we've heard of teachers asking violin dealers and shop sellers to mark up by 100% just to get that bigger commission. One of my very...
Yes, I've had kind of this situation happening to me as well, where a teacher would contact me and say like, look, if this student, which is called whatever, contacts you, please tell him that your price is different to the one that you told me, because that way I can make a profit. I recently wrote an article for a shop in London on how to choose an instrument. I'm going to link it in the description. I think it can be very useful for some things. And I was going to write there something like, do not trust your teacher. But to be fair, I think that's also not the truth, because I've also met some really, really good teachers who maybe after a couple of minutes trying my instrument, they said like, no, this is much better than what I have to offer you, or they were really genuine about it.
First teachers in Taiwan definitely scammed me. We found out later that we paid way too much for a violin that doesn't sound like it's meant to even sound good.
Yep.
I think we probably paid 10x the price.
Oh my god. The parents just want the best for the kid. And then for the teacher to know that they have this power to really kind of push it that way. It's like, what are you trying to achieve besides more money?
When it comes to buying
Money.
instruments, please try to get second and third opinions.
Go to someone the teacher has no association with.
Yes.
And say, hey, what do you think of this instrument? What do you think of this bow?
Yeah.
The problem with that though is that the person you're going to ask might also have its own interest. So it could happen that, for example, you take a violin to a shop and you ask whether it's good or not, and they might say that it's bad only because they want to try and sell one of their own. It's kind of like the Google reviews thing, that for example I got a negative fake review I think 1 month ago from a musician in theory that never contacted me and wrote a review during the most extreme lockdown, so obviously didn't visit my workshop. And I also saw that this person, musician in theory, wrote different negative reviews to some of the most famous violin makers in the city. So it could happen that they just want to talk badly just to damage the reputation of the other person as well. That being said, I still think it's a good idea to try and get different opinions.
Like, honestly speaking, it's so hard to know what a good instrument is. I'd say even now, after like 22 years of playing experience, it's still not easy.
I still can't tell sometimes. And sometimes I need to check. I need to ask around. I need to go, hey, is this the actual price?
Yeah.
How does that sound actually?
A 6-7-year-old starting and their parent
that doesn't even play an instrument, they're not going to know, and they're probably too busy.
teachers, people will be abusing this. There are just so many other ridiculous stories about it. For example, there was a case where a student bought from the shop, but that student has 2 teachers. And both teachers called to demand for a commission. And so now the shops, like, they're being forced to jack up their prices to anticipate commissions that they didn't even want to, right?
They're kind of under the mercy of the recommendations. On one, you go, what?
Now this is true and it works at very different levels. For example, most of my sales nowadays are commissions which I get because of word of mouth, which I really believe is the best marketing you can get. But at the same time it's the most difficult one, because you might get some people recommending certain instruments because out of personal interest, instead of really recommending it because they really believe on the instrument or they believe on the maker. As I said before as well, it means that it's very difficult for makers to enter into new markets.
What do I do? Do I say no to everything? I lose all my business to a competitor that's next door. She pays all the commissions, you know?
I think we can all agree the problem here is there's a betrayal of trust between the teacher and the student, and there's a kind of power dynamic that happens between influential teachers and small business owners.
Yeah.
One of the more common solutions that we've heard of, and again, I don't know if this is possible, but it's that if our ecosystem is going to depend on referrals and teachers are going to want to make a little bit of money, perhaps the best thing to do is to make this whole process transparent and to make it fair.
That would be very, very good. The only problem is, why would they do it? I mean, it would be like giving up some of their power.
Yeah, none of this 100% markup thing, right?
It's so much better to tell a student, hey, just so you know, I would recommend this guy, but I also get a commission from it.
Yeah, there's also teachers that sell instruments to their students directly, and that's also a bit sus.
Yeah, that's also very...
This can really be one of the worst cases. I've seen some instruments being sold by teachers at ridiculously high prices, and it really puts the student in a very difficult position.
Very sus.
But, you know,
to be honest, we didn't really think much
we
about
never did it.
We never did.
I didn't even know it existed.
It didn't even occur to me.
Occur to me.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure the student got a good freaking rehair, so he can come back and not play like No, I'm just joking.
It's funny because when we initially said like, nah, this doesn't really happen where we grew up, and they're like, no, it happens. You probably just don't know about it.
Yeah, we really never want to believe that we're wrong, and it's, as it's usually said, it's easier to trick someone than to make the person realize that it has been tricked.
The second part we want to talk about is fake instruments.
Everyone knows it's everywhere, but everyone's just going along with it.
Yeah. Tell them about how your label got chipped off in your violin, your scorletta.
Oh yeah, so okay, look, I still like my instrument. It's been with me for like 12 years before I changed to a new violin. The maker is called Renato Scorletta, but the R was cut off. So I was like, who's this Kanato Japanese Italian guy making my instrument? It's so dodgy. But I never went further than that because I was like 14-year-old, 15, had other problems in my life, right? Then one day after the tour, 2017 tour, I met the maker. I actually met the maker's daughter first. And the maker's daughter looked at it first. She said, it might be his. All of his instruments, apparently, there's a nickname for the instrument.
Yeah.
But mine didn't have a nickname. On the top of the label, someone cut it off. And put that label on a different instrument somewhere. So that label is currently on an instrument somewhere around the world. Someone probably thinks it's a legit scorletta. And I was like, oh my god. She goes, and I'm also not sure if this date is the correct date. But she took it to him anyway. We verified that it was his because he started crying. It's like a little baby. She thinks it's called the Scarletti. It's named after the composer Scarletti. But she goes, yeah, someone cut it off. Case in hand, is like so easy to fake an instrument.
Yes, especially for modern instruments that for the untrained eye can look very, very similar between themselves. What they might do is to put the label of a very expensive violin maker into the one of a cheaper one, or even into factory-made instruments that can cost 300 euros. I've seen this before where a client doesn't find out for many, many years until he decides to message the maker to ask if that instrument was made by this person, and the maker responds that it hasn't. So my advice for this would be, try to message the maker before buying the instrument and not afterwards.
Sorry, on that topic, our friends in the violin shop, right? Someone came in with a violin to repair. There was a label of some maker. The label made it was like as if they paid 5 figures for the instrument. But then the shop owners was like, that's our violin. Someone bought our violin, stuck a label on it, and sold it with an insane markup. Doesn't help that people have become very good at making fake. There's a story that
another very well-known thing for modern instruments is that some makers don't make their own instruments themselves. If not, that they might make someone else do them, or else they might get some factory-made instruments, revarnish them and make a new setup. Now this is usually quite easy to spot because, for example, I can only make around 5 or 6 instruments a year. Now let's imagine that I'm very, very slow and that I could double it, which I really don't think it's the case because I even work on weekends and don't really take holidays. But as I said, let's imagine that scenario. So if you're going to a maker and you see that it has 30 instruments to offer, then that's a bit suspicious.
Viom once pranked Paganini by making a lookalike copy of his Guarneri. Paganini himself apparently couldn't tell the difference when looking at it, his own violin. So you can imagine how good these fakes are, and also
They go further.
Yeah.
They even fake the age, make it look older, and even change the parts slightly to deceive the buyer. So don't be fooled by that. I'm sure you can go to a shop now and see an instrument that looks kind of old, but it's actually made in 2020 or something. Yeah.
dating itself could be a problem.
Tinder.
Some analysis to see how old the violin is,
Yeah.
but they will already make.
He was talking about other type of dating.
Someone in 1700s, 1800s made a violin at the same time.
Yeah, you can't tell by the dating.
You can't just tell by the
mechanism.
date.
Actually, unrelated story, but this is something to keep in mind as well. Some modern violin makers make their violins with thin wood. Thinner wood means the violin will sound better in the short term, but it ages badly. Violins with thicker wood, they need more playing and time to mature.
Yes.
So that's something else.
Okay, that's kind of subjective, and this is coming from someone who doesn't make thin instruments, as I tend to agree with him, and I think that the thicker ones tend to age better, and they have a certain richness on the tone which I really like. But that being said, it will also depend on some other characteristics, such as the density of the wood, the type of grain, or even the type of arching.
To be wary of.
And the thicker was like, doesn't mean it's always good, it just means there's better potential. Like your old one was also thin, right?
Yeah, my old violin, the sound just
It went
really down.
Yeah, and it was an old violin, the typical old violin story. So just,
I mean, I don't know.
you guys got to be careful, you know.
Yeah, a really.
So one of the things that might happen, for example, is that these old instruments get a setup that will make them sound very well at the beginning. It will seem that they're very potent, very rich, but it will be kind of over pushing the instrument, and this setup will wear off very quickly, and then the sound of the instrument will go on a downhill.
Certifiers themselves may have questionable.
Yeah, it's just, it doesn't mean if it's certified, it means it's a legitimate
Are they
instrument.
getting bribed?
Now this for modern instruments is slightly easier, or let's say more convenient, because for example I keep a digital copy of all my certificates of the instruments, of my instruments that left the workshop. So if someone messages me and says, is this your certificate or is this your instrument, I can always check that and confirm. But unfortunately, yes, with older instruments I know of some cases of people certifying things which are not.
Are they getting secret commissions?
Yeah.
We won't go into too much detail, but there's another link below if you want to find out about
Satori.
fake Satori bows. Satori is kind of like a premium bow as well.
Yeah.
Also very, how much they go for?
Satori bows are like $30,000.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind a Satori bow, but it's just a stick of wood.
Yeah.
Just a stick of wood. I'm sure my bow maker would be very angry about this quote, considering all the work that's behind them, such as the curve, the shape, the weight distribution, the quality of the materials. But I really understand what he meant about that, so that's okay.
And you can see how, whoa, now we're talking about faking it.
We have a friend. She's
Right.
definitely not someone that can just cough up money to buy a $500,000 violin.
No
But
way.
in the violin world, the price has been jacked up so much to the point where a lot of the value of good instruments are no longer just about how they sound, but there's the history and art behind it. And so she almost got tricked into buying.
A Scarum-Palla violin.
Yeah.
So this is also quite a good violin. Probably going for 100,000 now.
Yeah, you know, she was considering buying it. Got a lot of different opinions. A few experts said it's a fake. So she's not even in a financial position where she can be. I think she was considering getting a
She's
loan
considering
out.
it. That wouldn't.
Well, in that case, my advice will always be, don't buy something you can't really afford, and this is not just related to classical instruments or bows or whatever. Of course, in this case, I assume that the price is more about the historical thing as well, rather than the quality of the instrument itself, maybe.
And another story I just remembered. Remember how your bow got swapped out?
Yeah, so this is one of those moments on the moment when we thought about it, I think it happened to me. Long story short, can you imagine it, like a innocent 13, 14-year-old? I wouldn't dare to challenge an adult. So I got my bow for a rehab, picked it up again. This is so crazy. I picked up the bow and I thinking, hey, this is not my bow. Innocently, I go, hey, I don't think this is my bow. But the bow guy was like, no, it is your bow. It ended at that. I didn't question it because it's an adult.
As a student,
That is so true, and such a sad story, but it's so true. When you're a kid, you just blindly believe on what the adult says.
You know, look, this is definitely one of the biggest and most frustrating problems in the music industry, especially for violins. The value of a violin often comes from investment purposes.
Yeah.
You know, like investors literally buy violins. They're not even musicians.
They just
buy
buy
it as an
it,
investment.
and some investors don't even care if it's a good violin or not. As long as everyone thinks it's a legitimate instrument, it'll go up in value.
Price. And because of that, wealthy people have driven up the cost of violins. The story is that modern day makers are not able to find the formula of the great classics at Stradivarius, so therefore they're limited.
I think this he just said basically sums up the whole video in a way, because as many of the other things were built up, I believe that this one is too. Of course I might be a bit biased here because I'm a modern maker, but I know that nowadays makers use better techniques, the older and modern knowledge. They can be more precise than the older ones, and there's no such thing as a secret varnish or a secret anything around the older instruments. And don't get me wrong, I'm not talking bad about them. I think that what they did was amazing, and I'm not trying to diminish any of their work. My workshop is only 100 meters away from Stradivarius' house, and I'm honored about that. But what I'm trying to say is that I think that keeping this narrative that those instruments are so magical is also what keeps their prices so high.
Mm-hmm. And therefore they keep going up in price. Mm-hmm. It's a big problem. It's one of the reasons that we went for a modern maker as well. A lot of decent sounding violins with proper historical names will just be in the 6 figures.
I'd love to play one, but it's too much even for us, right? It's just too much money. And also you have to go through the whole hassle of checking its authenticity. You get 3 experts, they could all have different opinions. What are you going to do? So that's why we kind of went for a new instrument. The maker's alive. The maker can look at it and go, yes, this is my instrument. It just makes it easier, that's why.
I always say the same thing. I think that to get an old instrument that is of the same quality or superior than a modern one, you have to go to the 6 digits. And by that point, of course, that you're also getting a historical piece that has been most likely properly fixed. Maybe the archings were redone, most likely the interior has been rebuilt, which means that they glue a new piece of wood and then they remade the thicknesses. Now, this is kind of cool because you get kind of a mix between an old instrument and a modern one.
My advice though, I want to share is that if you're a student, see if you can find a way to get loaned a great instrument. I know a lot of music schools these days have some system. If not, my personal approach to it is you can never truly be sure about the investment side of the value. So I try to focus on just paying for an instrument that at least the sound and practical value makes sense to me.
Yes.
Even if today I found out it was a fake, how good it sounds makes me feel okay with the price I paid for it.
Yes. Sound, how easy it was played, quality of it, right?
Yeah.
I think that's great advice. And another thing I would add, if possible, and I know it's not easy, is to learn some things about violin making. This could help you know how to spot a good quality instrument from one that it's not, construction-wise of course. And then to learn how to analyze the sound as well, some characteristics of it rather than just saying, I like this instrument or I don't. And there's more about this in this article that I mentioned before, which I'm going to be linking on the description. Another thing I would obviously look for is transparency, both on a violin maker or a shop, and of course this is not something easy to spot. For example, one of the reasons why I do YouTube is, well, first of all, because I love the community and I'm always watching YouTube while working, so I always had the feeling that I needed to give something back, but also because, well, it's free marketing, but I think as I'm always showing all the instruments that I make, or at least most of the instruments that I make, and I'm showing the construction process, clients that commission an instrument from me can see that it's actually me the one who's building it, that it's me working on all the steps, and I think that makes them feel a bit more secure. I could probably talk more on why I prefer modern instruments to older ones, but I don't really think it's related to the topic and I don't want to make this video too long, so please let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in something like this. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and share the video if you enjoyed it, to subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and until the next time.